Okay, so now we're recording. This is my presentation, Numinous. Numinous is usually a word that strikes a sense of awe, kind of in a cosmic or deeply spiritual way. And so basically, a walk-in is when a soul, by soul contract, exchanges with another soul that's already incarnate into a body. Usually, they've grown up the body, but it's for the purpose of typically healing and ascension and raising the vibration of the person and the body and fulfilling a different soul mission than what they were actually accomplishing before. It's kind of the basics. I'll explain more about walk-ins. There'll be some more time for Q&A. I'll probably talk for close to an hour and yeah, then go from there. So here's the introduction. Greetings to my fellow Earthlings, walk-ins, and starseed souls. My name in this body is Troy J. Bacon. My Syrian name is Arel Kumo, and my gray name is Luilna. I'm before you today to present the story of the transition from my walkout brother and myself as a walk-in soul. I will also highlight some differences between the two of our lives in this body and my purpose for this incarnation. So this is an older picture of him in this body. The physical appearance hasn't really changed. Some walk-ins, by the way, their face actually morphs a little bit, and it doesn't become asymmetrical or anything, but it just looks like a different person, not the same facial structure that they had when the body was born. And so sometimes walk-ins bring about physiological changes. He was always, I think throughout his whole life, he was always just curious about life. And as he grew up a little bit, he was trying to figure out the meaning of life. And also, once he started learning about spirituality, he was going to many events, mostly at a Mind Body Spirit bookshop near the house he grew up in. And yeah, he started exploring a lot of systems, trying to find the truth, kind of truth seeking, and learning more about who he is too. Some with past life regression and different types of shamanism and energy work. So he dabbled a lot, but never really got to the core and embodied all of the truth of who he could be. He was always very sensitive and empathic. It actually took him about 22 years, I believe, to really realize that he's an empath type. Before that, nobody really helped him understand that. But yeah, so he was always an empath. I included the word Hiraeth here, or Hirith, I think it's pronounced. It's a Welsh word that means a longing for a home that you don't know exists. And it's interesting that, just an interesting word. He always knew that he didn't quite fit in when he was growing up. From a young age, he always thought that he was adopted, perhaps, because he didn't fit in with the family he was raised in. He had only kind of a few friends throughout his life, kind of selective, and also just a few who would kind of resonate or get along with him, which is quite typical for starseeds, is to not quite fit in with most of the rest of society and most other people, because they're just not quite of this planet. Anyway, so there's that, and he was always a warrior by nature. From a very young age, he had a sense that he wanted to learn martial arts. The first system he learned was Japanese karate, and then, but that was quite rigorous actually and demanding. So eventually, that was a little bit too demanding for him, and he dropped out of that, only to start learning Taekwondo maybe 2 or 3 years later when he switched to a different school. And Yeah, Taekwondo was a bit easier just from the teacher that he was with, and much more integrative too. His Taekwondo teacher, who I'm still connected with, taught him many other martial arts too, and to learn many other martial arts. He had past lives as samurai, probably as ninja, other warriors. He had, as I recall, two past lives in America as different types of US soldiers. I believe one in the Army and one in the Navy. Actually, it was at the Fort Casey, old Fort Casey base that's no longer active on Whidbey Island. And he visited there and had a strong past life remembrance upon just visiting and touching the place, the concrete dugouts that are still there. Yeah, it's a bit of trauma there. I actually had to finish clearing up during my walk-in. Also, from a young age, and for most of his life, he believed that there could be and probably is intelligent life in the universe besides humans. But when he really started listening to Coast as a teenager and learning and hearing about some of the even horrific and kind of graphic things that people were describing from alien contact experiences, then sometimes the topic would even scare him a little bit, but he never really was frightened after he learned of his contact. Then all he remembered was more benevolent, peaceful contact on ship experiences and not the traumatic types. So there was that. He was a lifelong contactee. He didn't learn that so much in such a concrete way until after he graduated from college at the age of 22. And then it was before he graduated in December of 2017 that Oumuamua passed through our solar system and made that slingshot around our sun, essentially, which, as far as we know, has never happened here before. That we've observed, and it was just like a one-off event. As soon as he heard the news ahead of time that there was this unprecedented large space rock on its way toward us, he knew that it was not a normal, just simple inanimate space rock or asteroid, whatever you call it. He knew that it was something else and had a sense that it was probably an alien ship or something. And many other people still, he knew that Oumuamua was not quite a normal space rock. It was only 3 weeks after its passing through our solar system that he actually had a vision. He'd never had anything quite like it before. I think there was something truly alien and um, special about Oumuamua, but he had a vision of asteroids. It looked like kind of a meteor, really, with also smaller chunks um, firing, hurtling through space. But then he got the message that it's actually a craft on its way here. He also got the message and was told that it would be arriving about 8 months from then. That was very early January of 2018. And so then it would be arriving around August of 2018. For all of the first 8 months of 2018, he had no idea. It still is kind of confusing. Only I think I figured it out, but he didn't understand why an alien spaceship would take 8 months to travel here when most of them can teleport literally in no time. Yeah, then he started getting telepathic messages about the ship throughout 2018. Even got some telepathic visitations from the beings on the craft. After he returned from New Zealand on a study abroad trip in April of 2018, then he attended a sound bath event, and it was in deep meditation there that a large kind of cosmic being approached him in meditation. It felt like a very large and old presence, he told him that he would be somewhat of a guide to him, and especially a guide on this process until the apparent arrival of these craft. By the way, there was a time that he thought that he was going crazy. He didn't have anyone to talk to about his apparent premonitions of an alien ship or aliens saying they're going to arrive here. And but they kept talking to him, and that just continued. They even gave him some numbers, which seem to have been coordinates actually, of different places on the Earth, probably of where they were going to set up bases and such. But yeah, so he went through all of that, and then in August of 2018, oh, he also had dreams too of meteors falling from the sky, and also a comet just appearing in the sky. That dream repeated twice in one morning, which he had never had before. So he interpreted that as a message that they're going to be arriving in that way, and then distributing throughout the Earth based on where the meteors were falling in the dream and such. Yeah, and so then it was in August of 2018, he actually went to Mount Adams for a UFO and Sasquatch filming project. It never really became a film, but it was then that he had close encounters, relatively close encounters with Sasquatch, or soon to be Sasquatch beings. And he remembers a large black-haired Sasquatch that was like the main Sasquatch dealing with him and the group he was with, and induced him into the state he needed to be in for phasing through his tent and going to the Black Triangle for contact during that camping trip. And yeah, missing time and battery failures and the whole 9 yards of that stuff. That pushed him to yet another moment of not questioning his sanity, but more like, because he had such irrefutable proof, having gone up on an alien ship and strange stuff happening, but not knowing exactly what happened or what they may have done. Then he did have a fear moment, actually some days that he was kind of afraid, and but then he did a self kind of like self hypnosis, even though he hadn't really been trained in that before. But he just had some memory recall. One of them was a three-pronged needle instrument that he'd never seen anything like it, but remembering that sent an electrical shock throughout his body, physically, cold electrical shock. And it was one of the few memories he had of the devices on the ship that were not just devices like we think of them, they're actually alive. It's truly otherworldly how they make their stuff to be what seem to be materials, but they're also alive. Quite amazing. And I wish we could just have that here, because in this world we wouldn't have pollution and all this stuff, problems of technology that we have. So yeah, he had his contact, and then memories of the ship, and very clear recall of some of the devices on the ship too, and learned that he was involved with a group of gray aliens. I think I can go to the next slide now. Yeah. So this is a little bit more about preparing him for the reunion at Mount Adams, where they actually under Mount Adams is one of the glowing white pyramids that they set up in August, as it seems to be. I've actually visited there too a couple of times since my walk-in, and just in August of this year, actually, I went back to Mount Adams and revisited them. Quite a lovely experience, honestly. Anyway, so he's been prepared for this reunion, actually. And after the reunion, he had a couple of quantum healing hypnosis sessions for past or for memory regression. of what happened, and he indeed did recall more of what happened on the ship, the sphere ship. By the way, this spherical ship here on the lower right of the screen, uh, that's not my graphic design, but it's pretty close, kind of, in some ways, to the appearance of the sphere ship that I remember. Um, he saw it once in a dream as a child, but in the dream it had more like probably 7 or 8 different layers to it, kind of like floors of a spherical building, perhaps, but each layer was separated by colorful lights and blinking, rotating lights and such. But this is pretty close, I think, because it has this what looks like a window strip around the hemisphere. And he did have a very clear recall of having looked out that um, that curved window out into space and looking back at the Earth and Moon at times. Interestingly, though, he didn't recall looking directly at our sun through that window. I don't know if that's done intentionally, but someone else, a doctor I know, said once that that makes sense because supposedly when you're in space, you don't see our sun the same way you do on Earth. There's like some sort of lensing effect of our atmosphere that makes us see it more clearly. It's maybe it, I don't know, it appears differently or isn't as visible from further out in space. Anyway, yeah, so they came here in a sphere ship. I think the reason it took 8 months to travel here was not only because they were coming from so far away, but I think their large ship is just too large to teleport. And that seems to be concurrent or consistent with other sphere ships that I've heard of, such as what Corey Good has described and other contactees who have observed just large spheres, but they move kind of slowly through space, not just like teleporting quickly back and forth. It's, as far as I understand it, most of the scout ships and smaller ships that can teleport, as many people have cited them. But yeah, this is the sphere ship that he would go to, and so he had this awakening of communing and having this lifelong contact with this grays. Um, Again, this isn't my digital graphic, but this is a pretty close representation of what my gray family looks like. There's 3 of them. Mutu is the elder, then Aurel is one of them. Cha'ei is my gray brother where I came from as a walk-in, and my walkout returned or switched out to that body, and I've met him since a number of times, and so it's interesting. Actually quite a lovely welcome experience. I haven't experienced love and brotherhood like that on Earth so far. And there's the mantids, which some people depict them as literally like insectoid human looking bodies with a mantis head, but I've always remembered them as looking like just giant praying mantis insects, similar to what is pictured here. Yeah, then it was early on, actually, in 2018, when they were telepathically contacting my walkout, remembering this or having this contact, that the Greys, the Mantids, the humans, there's a human group or a few of them that were on the ship, it seemed. And then there was a reptilian, at least one, or sort of a dragon reptilian. This is an exact representation. But a benevolent reptilian, I think he's somewhere else on or within the earth right now. I believe my walkout got a message that he might be under Japan or was at some point. So yeah, there was that. Even before the walk-in, he got other messages too that there were actually 7 types in the group, kind of Galactic Federation related group he was in contact with, and The other three types were an amphibian group, avian, and one of them might have been a fish type, aquatic type. I don't remember so clearly that seventh type. Anyway, so yeah, and after his experience, an awakening after Mount Adams, this is Mount Adams on the left, a picture he took of it. It reflects beautifully into Taklak Lake right here. Then he read The Forgotten Promise by Sherry Wild, who I actually hosted on the Sufan YouTube channel last year a couple of times. She tells her fascinating story in this book, The Forgotten Promise, as well as many interviews and appearances she's done on YouTube channels. So about this, I wrote, when your star family knock on the door of your life, you're obligated to answer. Does your life forever change, or do you fulfill your agreements? For me, it might be the latter, more like fulfilling the agreements that I made with them as a soul to have arranged this walk-in, participating in the ascension process of this earth. Yeah, so then there was some time of answering the calling that he did, or you could call it that. He had a calling after college to get involved with a UFO group, and he found Sufan, which this is like one of the banners that's on the Facebook group for Sufan. Yeah, that's the Seattle UFO Network. I think most of you, or all of you, are aware of that, parts of it. And when you start walking the path, the way presents itself. That's an old quote he found by Lao Tzu a long time ago in college, and it's very true. When you start walking a path in life, even though you don't know where it's going to lead, more and more things start presenting themselves to you, to follow, clues and omens and different things. So here's a bit about what happened, especially within the few months before my walk-in. Actually, for over a year, he was involved in the body and brain yoga school, because he felt that he needed some deeper healing, for actually some of the trauma he experienced in college. There are a lot of messed up people at the college he went to, honestly. So he had to learn deeper healing with that, as well as for some pains he had in his body at the time. When I look back at the events that happened prior to my walk-in, they appear to have been preparatory, or to prepare me for the walk-in, prepare him. He actually had a dream, I think it was over a year before the walk-in, in the summer of 2019, in which it was a vivid dream where he met in person one of the large, like 9 to 10 foot tall praying mantis beings. He was meeting like 2 or 3 other humans, Earth humans, at that time. He just met them, and then the mantis started giving them messages and saying something to them. He doesn't remember what was said in the dream, but I'm pretty sure that that was the mantises preparing him and possibly a few other walk-ins for their walk-in that was going to occur, or something of the sort. But that's what makes sense to me, to prepare. I think they were preparing him all along for this, because they actually gave him a message in his second quantum healing hypnosis session in January of 2019. Something was going to be happening in 2021, or to prepare for 2021. And for a while, he thought it was going to be the solar flash that would reset this planet, but indeed it was not yet. It's probably still going to happen, but they were preparing him for me as a walk-in, because that was already agreed to and destined. And they were suggesting to him that he embark on this journey of spiritual healing and prepare more consciously and energetically for me as a walk-in to come in, because walk-ins are always of a higher density and vibration and consciousness than the walkout that they exchange with. So for him to prepare from the darkness that he actually had been living in for some time, he would need to do a lot of healing just for me to be able to walk in and embody as I did. He started doing YouTube videos. I don't really post anything on that particular channel anymore, but then I started a couple of, actually I've made videos for 3 YouTube channels now since my walk-in. I've become much more entrepreneurial too. This is interesting. He bought the ring that actually I used to propose to my now wife before or shortly after my walk-in. He bought that before the walk-in, or started that process, because he had a dream in which he was at his college again, and someone was telling him that he's been at it, it felt like for 6 years, and that they're asking him if he's been at it for long enough, and it was time for him to move on and graduate. So then that was, I think, actually, it might have been me in the dream contacting him to make that move. He'd already been with my now wife Leah for 6 years at the time, and so that happened. It's been a learning journey, but here, I think the next part is the walk-in itself. Which